So let's first create a base class here. So let's suppose the name of the base class is base. So let's first define our base class. So in the private section, I will declare variable a, and in the public section, I will create a variable b, and I will also create a function display. And I'm not defining the function inside the class. I will just display it. I can define it outside the class, but because this function will be smaller, I can define it here only. It will just display the value of b. And it will take an integer. Let's suppose it will take x as an integer. So it will display x. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create protected section also. And in the protected section, I will create variable c and a variable float d also. So this is our base class, and now what we are going to do is let's write our main function here. In the main function, what I'm going to do is I'm now not going to create an object of this base class. I will create another class. I will call this as a subclass. Let's call this base class as well. So what I will do is I will create a subclass and it will inherit the properties. So I will use this colon here. So since it will inherit the properties from the base class, I will write base class here. So if you have not used any visibility mode, it is private by default. But since I'm going to show you the public derivation mode, I will use public as a visibility mode here. So we will derive the members of the base class using the public visibility mode. And we know that when we are using the public mode, then the public section of this base class is visible in the public section of the subclass, and similarly the protected member of the base class will be visible in the protected section of the subclass. So let's now define our subclass. So there will be a private section. Let's say the private section, in the private section I am writing some values y. In the public section, I am creating value p, and in the protected section I will create another value int q. So the main reason why we are creating this program is to check how inheritance works. There is no significance of this program. So we are not going to do some actual work here. We are just going to learn how different visibility modes will work. This is the visibility mode. So we will see how it will work when we will create an object of the subclass. So let's now create an object of subclass, and let's say it is S1. So now what we will do is we will use the object of the subclass. So this is S1, and what we will do is we will try to assign the value of y here. So let's try to assign the value of y as 9. So we know that y is in the private section of the subclass. So we cannot assign it here. So it is showing a warning here, y is a private member of subclass. So this is what we have already done before. So now what I'm just going to do is I will try to assign value of a in this main function. Using the object of the subclass, I will try to access the base class members. So let's suppose I'm going to use a equals to 8. So in this case, since private members are inheritable, so you cannot use the object of the subclass to access that variable. So variable a is the private member of base class. So you cannot inherit the member of the base class. So we know that if we are deriving it publicly, so the public members, which is b in our case, will be visible in the public section of the subclass. So we will use the object of the subclass to access b. So let's now use s1 dot b equals to 9, and then we will just display the value of s1 dot b. So s1 is the subclass and b is the public member of the base class, and since we are deriving it publicly, you can see the visibility mode is public. So it will be like int b. So this variable b is visible in the public section. So I can write here that int b will be visible here in the public section. So I can use the object of the subclass to access the public members, which is b. So let's now run this program and see what will be the output. So you can see that the output will be 9. So there is no error in this program. So now what we're going to do is let's try to access variable c. So we know that if we are using the visibility mode public, the protected members will be inside the protected section of the subclass, and we know that we cannot access the protected section outside the class because it is similar to private. We know that private members are not accessible outside the class, so we cannot even access the protected members outside the class. The only difference between the private and the protected is that private members are not inheritable. You cannot inherit them. So they are not inheritable. But protected section, you can inherit properties in the protected section. So if you have used the public derivation, the protected members of the base class will be visible in the protected section of the subclass. So if you are using public, you should not confuse that the protected member should also go to the public section. So c and d variables will not be visible in the public section. It will be visible in the protected section when you are using the public mode. So let's try to access c variable in this using the object of the subclass, and let's try to display it here. And now let's run this program. So you can see here that it will give an error, and the error says that int base class scope resolution, that means that c is in the base class, is protected within this context. So this is our context, and since we have used the public visibility mode, so the protected members will go in the protected section. So you cannot access c and d using the object of the subclass. So what we will do now is we will try to change visibility mode here. So let's change it to private. So we know that if you are using the private visibility mode, the public and the protected members of the base class will be visible in the private section of the subclass. So if you will use the object of the subclass to access any variable of the base class, you cannot access them outside the class because private members are not accessible outside the class. So this is simple, that you can see that this is the public section of the base class and this is the protected section. So if you are using private visibility mode, the variable b, this function display, the variable c and the variable d will be visible in the private section of the subclass. So they will be visible here. So visibility or availability means that you can use the object of the subclass to access a member. So if you're using the private derivation, you cannot use the object of the subclass to access the members of the public and protected section. So if you will try to access C here, we can see that it is C. Even if we try to access B here, or if we try to access any variable of this base class, it will not be possible using the object of the subclass. So it will say the B is a private member of the base class. So it is in the public section, B is in the public section, but since we have used the private visibility mode, it will be visible in the private section, so you cannot access it here. So the next one is the protected. So if you will use protected visibility mode, so the public members will be of the base class. So the public members of the base class will be visible in the protected section. So this variable b and this function display will be visible inside this protected section. So this means that you can even create another base class. So you can create another subclass of this subclass and you can inherit protected members. So if you have used the protected derivation, that means that you want the programmer wants to create some more classes so that they can access or they can inherit the members of this subclass. So this example is an example of basically single level inheritance. You can see here that this is a subclass and there is only one base class, and we are inheriting the properties from a single base class. So there can be more than one base class, and in that case it will be known as multiple inheritance. So we can create some more base class also, like I will write it as base class 2, and we will have to create another base class here, base class 2, and then we can define the base class here similar to this one. So this subclass is inheriting properties from the base class and also base class 2. So now there are two base classes separated using a comma, and this subclass is inheriting properties from multiple base classes. And you can see here that you can change these visibility modes according to your needs. So protected means that you are just inheriting the base class members using the protected visibility mode, and if you are inheriting the members of the base class 2, you are using private visibility mode. So this is an example, this will become an example of multiple inheritance. So I strongly recommend you to take a book and perform some examples using these concepts. I'm just going to explain the basics behind all of this working. your work is to just do it and implement yourself in your IDE and play around with these visibility modes. You can change them, and you can see how the objects, how you can access the members using objects of the subclass. So in this tutorial we have covered inheritance and visibility modes, the three visibility modes, and we have covered three or four types of inheritance: the single level inheritance, multiple inheritance, multi-level inheritance, and the hybrid inheritance. Thanks for watching.